بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. مشاهدينا الكرام، مشاهدي ديرب إيميغرانتس، أهلا وسهلا بكم مرة أخرى في دروس الآيلتس ومهارة المحادثة. معنا اليوم الأستاذ تريفور. Mr. Trevor, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. We hope to continue today the second part of the speaking skill.
Excellent.
Thank you. I will leave the place to you.
Okay.
And it's your field.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for having me again.
Thank you.
So just as a quick review, within the speaking for IELTS, we have 3 parts that we're going to be looking at, and the IELTS examiner will be asking you questions in these 3 areas. So in part 1, if you remember, or if you refer back to the video that we shot a few weeks ago, in part 1, the questions will be more introductory style questions. So these are questions asking about where you like work, or are you studying, what kind of accommodations, what do you like about your hometown, maybe comparisons between where you're from originally and if you're in Canada or in a Western country. So it's introduction, or I'll say introductory questions. In part 2, if you remember, you will be given a topic on a card, and you have 1 minute in order to take a few notes, and you will have 1 to 2 minutes when you will be responding to the question and the subparts that are within that question. So 1 minute to prepare, and then 1 to 2 minutes to speak. And if you remember from last time, my recommendation is that you take practice questions, you write them in the form of a paragraph with a topic sentence, some of the ideas that you have with specific examples, add in some transition signals, and then record yourself speaking those sentences. Usually it would be about 6 to 8. And once you've read that and recorded it, then time yourself to see how long did it take you to speak those sentences. And then in part 3, this is where we're asking more difficult questions, and we're going to just be exploring the range of your vocabulary, your grammar. So we'll have some past tense questions, maybe some future tense questions. We'll be asking comparison contrast, or what is a problem and some solutions for that problem. And in all of those responses, you want to be giving 3 to 5 sentences. In the first part, you may only be asking or responding with 1, 2, or 3 sentences, and then we ask more questions. But here you're giving an extended discourse or extended response, and with those 3 to 5 sentences, then you pause. If we want more information about that specific topic, then we will ask you a second question, or we may switch to a new topic. So if we're talking about education, we may switch then to technology, or to the environment, or to family, different types of questions like that. So just as a quick review with your IELTS speaking, part 1, 2, and 3, you have about 11 to 14 minutes when you're with the examiner, and always when you come in, make eye contact with the examiner. You will be giving them your ID, usually a passport or government issued ID, and they will confirm your first and last name, and then they will start asking questions. Make sure that you relax, and then just knowing what's the head and the different parts that you have, you can be relaxed in answering those questions. So we're going to move into having a IELTS exam. IELTS speaking exam. So I will be interviewing and asking questions of our volunteer who will be with us shortly, and then we will evaluate and give some feedback as he answers each section. Okay, please come in.
Nice
Hello.
to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
My
Please
name is
have a
Ahmed.
seat. Okay. So, do you have your government ID with you today?
Sure.
Okay.
Here we go.
Thank you. And can you spell your name for me, please?
My name is Ahmed Jad. First
Okay.
name and last name.
And can you spell it, please?
It's Ahmad. First name, last name Jad.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Welcome.
So over the next 12 to 15 minutes, we're going to be asking some questions. I will be keeping track of the time with some of that, and I will be taking notes as we're going through these questions. And so maybe just begin. Tell me a little bit about a town or a village that where you grew up.
First of all, I was born and raised back home country in Kuwait.
Okay.
Kuwait is a country that is known in its culture and traditions.
Okay.
I've grown in a family that definitely speaks the language of Arabic.
Yes.
I went to Arabic schools, starting from kindergarten all the way to grade 12.
Okay.
I finished grade 12 and then moved to the university.
Okay.
I studied in Gulf University for Science and Technology back home country in Kuwait,
Yeah.
Bachelor of Science in Accounting. Graduated in 2012 back home country.
Okay.
And after that, the journey to moving around the world started to immigrated here to Canada. So
Okay. Okay. Good. So tell me a little bit. Just describe a bit about the town or city that you grew up in.
Kuwait has a harsh weather regularly on the summer.
Okay.
It's very hot. Temperature can reach to 65 degrees Celsius in the summer
Wow.
under the sun.
Okay.
It's so hot.
Yes.
In the winter, it's moderate. The weather is not so bad.
Okay.
Temperature can reach to like 15 degrees Celsius. Kuwait has lots of good places like museums, Kuwait Towers that you can actually go and visit, see the city from the top vision. We had lots of tourists that comes in the winter,
Yes.
not in the summer.
Okay.
We don't suggest people to come to the summer.
Not when it's okay.
Lots of different traditions you can actually find back home country. You can find people from India,
Yeah.
people from America, United States,
Okay.
people from Egypt, Palestine. Lots
Okay.
of different variation. You can actually have lots of different values and traditions
Okay.
around the culture in there.
Okay. And what kinds of jobs are typically found in that area?
Jobs in Kuwait is not as hard as in most of the countries. Basically, because Kuwait is an oil country.
Okay.
You can actually study, for example, accounting and work in a totally different department. To work for example, as a teacher in the school.
Okay.
Jobs in Kuwait definitely requires connections. It requires connections. If you don't have connections, it's kind of difficult to find a job. Social life in Kuwait is really strong.
Okay.
It's not hard to find that connection. Good word of mouth.
Yeah.
Spread the good word of mouth is the key to have a strong connection.
Okay. And are you working or studying now in Canada?
Right now in Canada, I'm working.
Okay. So can you compare a little bit with, like you've mentioned the need for connections, you've mentioned the different types of jobs in Kuwait. Can you compare a little bit with what you've experienced when you've arrived in Canada?
Well, definitely. The connection itself, the way the people communicate with each others here in Canada is a little bit different than back home country in Kuwait.
Yes.
Here in Canada, it's it's good. It's really important that you don't actually feel ashamed to always ask if there is any opening opportunity to join or to have that experience.
Yep.
Back home country, people used to actually feel embarrassed a little bit from asking that questions.
Yep.
Unless that person is a blood relation or a really close relative to you.
Okay.
However, here in Canada, I find the connection is that you need to be strong, always positive. You need to always ask questions. You don't need to feel embarrassed or ashamed.
Okay.
That's the connection type and like the differences between go back home country and here.
Okay, excellent. So I'm just going to stop here, and so this would be the end of part 1. During the exam, they will move directly into part 2. But I want to give some feedback during our speaking so far. So right away in the first questions that I've been asking, there's been no hesitation of extended answers. And so I actually cut you off several times because this part, even just 1, 2, 3 sentences is enough, and then let the examiner to respond or move to other questions. But I can already see that your level is not at a 4 or a 5 because you're responding with many sentences, you're giving good information. There's a couple of areas that I can see that it's not native speaker-like, but you're very close. Like for example, you said each others, so you added an S instead of each other. But that's a minor grammar mistake within the context of the rest of what he's been saying. Now, when you're thinking, you're saying or a lot. And there's different teachers that approach this differently. So in North America, even native speakers, if you're listening to somebody on the street or a conversation between several people, there will be ums or ahs as people are thinking. What we're looking for during this is it extended? And is it noticeable that it's actually slowing the conversation down? And so in this case, in the fluency area, again, it's only 1 out of 4 areas that we're evaluating, but in the fluency area, it is a little bit noticeable. It's not enough to bring you, again, down to a 4 or 5, but it is something that I would take note that it's not as smooth with some of those words. Yeah, which is fine. The information you've given, I really appreciate that he's talked with specific examples. So you said very, very hot, and a lot of people just stop there, or it's very far, it's very expensive, but then you gave me specific numbers, and that's what we often are looking for in Canada, the US, in Britain. We want a specific detail, because very hot to me in Canada would be 30, 35, at the very most, maybe 40 degrees Celsius. Yeah. So when you say 65, you saw, I was surprised. Yeah, wow, that is very hot. And then the 15 in the winter, here in our spring and our fall, it's 15. But those specific details are very helpful, especially also you mentioned the countries, from US, India, Egypt, and other countries. Okay, so we're going to move into part 2. Sure. And then I will also give some comments at that point, and we will end off in part 3.
Thank you.
So in part 2, there's going to be a question with several subsections. So usually you're going to get it on a card, and you will have 1 minute to read the question. In fact, I'll read it with you, and then 1 minute to think of your answers and write down some ideas, and 1 to 2 minutes to respond. So this question states, describe something you own, which is very important to you. Where did you get it? How long have you had it? And what do you use it for? So you have 1 minute now to prepare your answer. Okay. So you can now respond to the question.
Okay, so describe something that you own that is very, very important to me. I would definitely mention my car. It's not my car. It's basically my dad's car.
Okay.
He actually had this car back in 2012. I was actually probably November 2011. I was not actually here in Canada. I was completing my education back home country in Kuwait. He had it from the official dealer of the car, the official dealer of that brand car, which is Suzuki.
Okay.
The car is Suzuki Grand Vitara, basically, 2012 model. The car at that time, that was the first car that we actually purchased here in Canada. Okay. It was so helpful that actually facilitated every single thing in our life. Yeah. Mom used to go to school. Dad used to help her driving her to school every single day. I also, my brother also started the university here in Winnipeg. My dad used to also help him using that car, help him going to the university, going forth and back. When I joined here, when I came to my family, joined June 2012, the car was that car was so much crucial into the process of looking for opportunities in terms of either looking for universities, continuing the education, finding jobs, lots of different things. Another importance of that car is it facilitated us buying water. Huge gallons of water when you have a car. It's way different than when you don't have car. If you don't have car, you just have to lift everything by your hands and just walk in the street. Okay. And this is what we used to do. At the very time when I came here into Canada, that was exactly on January of 2011. Okay. So the car actually facilitated lots of different things. Okay. Nowadays, I actually use the car to go to my job. And every single day, I use the car to actually have fun with my wife, with my family, with my parents. We used to actually go to a picnic every single week, to the beach, to lots of different areas.
And I'm just going to stop you there. Okay.
Sure.
Great. So as he went over the 2-minute mark, then I was just kind of glancing between and seeing where would he stop. We were at 2 minutes and 40 some seconds, so then I did make a stop. Some instructors would be very strict, and at the 2 minute, they would just say stop. Around 2 minutes and 10 or 15 seconds, you had said facilitate a lot of things, so that could be a good summary, because you had already explained about water, and then you were going into more details. He gave excellent details where the vehicle was bought, how it's been used, and how long they've had it, so you were very specific with the month and the year within that, and then just how this has been very beneficial for your family, your parents, your brother, and now for yourself as well. Again, a couple of grammar areas that are not as, or phrasings that are not as common, but not that it's distracting from our conversation. I'm understanding everything, no pronunciation issues, just a couple of things that we would, like you said, so much crucial. So it's very crucial, or it is crucial. Yep. And then you mentioned forth and back, and we often say the other way, back and forth. It's just a small, So minor, again, they're not the things that will drag your mark to a very low point, just a few things that are noticeable as I'm analyzing. And when you're speaking with your friends and others in Canada, we're not listening for those things. Again, because we're doing an exam here, I'm going to be more focused and picky, we say. We're going to be more specific with it. Excellent. Okay, so let's move into part 3. And I will continue to ask, but now some more extended questions. Okay. So let's consider how people's values have changed if we look at the last few generations. You've mentioned that you're from Kuwait. What gives status to people in your country?
Food. Exactly. Like one of the most important thing back home country is food, which definitely lots of type of food I can't actually find here.
Okay.
The cheese, for example.
Okay.
We actually used to make a cheese in a different way, that you actually use a piece of fabric,
Okay.
and then you actually put the milk inside that, and you actually with some sort of pressure, you can actually produce a specific type of cheese that I really can't find in here.
Okay.
That's one example. Another example that in terms of food, another example that it's not actually in here is we have some type of food called a mansaf.
Okay.
It's basically rice, yogurt, and meat.
Okay.
Usually the meat is supposed to be specified as a lamb, not like a cow.
Yeah. Okay.
So this type of food is not actually found in here. That actually brings lots of values when we actually especially move to here in Canada.
Okay.
These values we can actually share to every other culture
Okay.
that actually lives in here.
Within that.
Bread, for example. Bread, we have lots of types of bread that can't actually found in here.
Okay.
There is like an Arabian bread, there is a Saj bread, there is mashrouh bread, lots of different variations of bread
Yeah.
that I, personally speaking, didn't find in here,
Okay.
which can also bring some like values into the communities.
Okay. And in part one, in the introduction, we talked a little bit about jobs.
Yes.
Are there some jobs in Kuwait that have higher status or higher recognition, and then other jobs that are not seen in that way?
Definitely. So if we're talking about like doctors, professionals like accountants, doctors, lawyers, those jobs right now in Kuwait, it's getting a little bit harder even in the job market in Kuwait. They actually require to, for example, for an accountant, they require him to have a CPA, Certified Public Accountant, or Certified General Accountant.
Yes.
This is what we have as a comparison in here in Canada.
Okay.
Doctors needs to be qualified by the minister of medication back home in Kuwait.
Yes.
Yes, we can find some examples back home country that if that the pharmacist can, for example, give medicine without a prescription, and that's actually also one of the big differences back home country and here.
Okay.
However, they still have to go within the limitation of, for example, if the drug is so much effective, or if it's going to be harmful so much, then they have to definitely go back and consult with the specialist doctor for that.
Okay. So if we look at the status and jobs, how has that changed since your parents' time? Or has it changed?
Definitely. So the jobs nowadays is getting harder and harder. Now they require much more qualifications in the person to have before the persons apply to that job. As I just mentioned, it's for accountants nowadays they are asking for CPAs. Okay. It's getting a little bit tough without connection to have the career in accounting without a CPA. Yeah. For example, an engineer without having an official identification card from the community of engineers in the country, then it's going to be a little bit tough to actually enter that market. So it's getting a little bit hard back home. Back those times, my parents didn't find that a challenge actually. So.
Okay. Perfect. So I'm going to move to a totally different topic. Okay. And so I'm going to ask you, does advertising influence what people buy?
Yes and no, depending.
Okay.
Yes and no.
Okay.
If we're talking about prohibition stuff back home country, let's talk about, for example, a pork. If we're making an advertisement on something that is prohibited, or generally speaking, the community around the community that lives in the country doesn't actually eat it, then regardless of how much you actually advertise it, it's not going to work.
Right.
Because it's not actually allowed for the people to actually eat. If you have a government restrictions, for example, like fireworks back home country, it's actually forbidden. By law. Like we can't as an individuals living in Kuwait, we can't actually have any sort of fireworks because they believe that it's going to be harming another person's life. Talking about general things, I believe yes. If you actually advertise things in a good way, where you actually can show people how actually that thing will be benefiting them, that's definitely going to actually affect your sales. You're going to get lots of sales if you have that good marketing.
Okay, so let me just ask a follow-up question, and this will be our last question.
Yes.
I saw advertising where it showed a child that was drinking milk, and within the commercial, the child was getting stronger, was getting taller, was seeing the benefits within that 30 or 45-second commercial. Do you feel that that is appropriate, or that it is not appropriate with focusing more on children's advertising?
So the child is drinking a milk in the advertising?
Correct.
Well, depending on, I believe yes, milk is good for the body. It's good for the kids to actually grow up in a good and healthy manner, right? So things that is like that, I would definitely believe that it's going to be it will actually have a positive impact on the society actually. Also, if we want to be much more specific in here, we can talk about ages. How old is that baby, and how old is that person? If the baby is so young, then we can't actually feed him milk. We can actually it's going to be depending on the doctor's prescription. However, that actually has the pros and cons as well.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time today, and good luck with the rest of your IELTS exam.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I will just give from part 3. So again, even from the very start, when Ahmad came in, there was extended discourse, meaning there was long answers. And so I already knew that he had the language capacity, he had the information that he could be explaining and talking through these different parts. His responses were good. At the very start, when I was asking about status in the country, it is related a little bit more, not so much to culture, but to the position in society. So when he started talking about food, I as an examiner have two choices, because food isn't really answering that question. Again, some examiners will just stop and then redirect or rephrase and move into that question again. Others, like I did, will just allow you to talk because we're evaluating your speaking. So in the area of content, it's not responding to that question. So that would give a little bit lower response in that section. But still, I can evaluate his pronunciation, his grammar, his speaking style, complex or simple sentences, etc. So with that, that's where I allowed him to continue, and then I moved into the jobs because I still wanted to find an answer for that question. When I gave a follow-up about the parents, and then is it a bit different, much of his information actually was repeated. And so that shows me that in that area, these are his main points, but if he could have explained or given a different example or expanded, then he would have got a little bit higher. But again, we're still within the 6.5 or 7 mark in IELTS, so it's not unusual or very low. And then as he went through, like he used words like prohibited, facilitated. He said one question about milk is good for your health, right? And that's not a simple way of speaking, and adding that tag part at the end, right, is a more advanced level. So those kind of clues show me that he is very close to a high level of speaking. He's probably between a 6.5 and a 7. I don't have the exact chart and grid in front of me right now, but and if he was looking at a 7.5 to be pharmaceutical or in the doctor, etc., then it would take very little practice and structure to help him move to that way. So thank you again for that interview, and we will pause at this area. Yes, please come in.
Hello.
Hello, please have a seat.
Thank
And can I see your ID today?
Yes, here you go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And can you spell out your name for me, please?
Yes, my first name is Lubna, Lubna.
Okay,
Would you like my last name as well?
sure, yes, please.
It's Usmani, Usmani.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to take about 11 to 14 minutes during our exam, and I will be asking a variety of questions over that time. So let me just start asking with your home, where you grew up. Like, was it in a town? Was it in a city? Just tell me and describe it a little bit for me.
All right, so I grew up in the city of Winnipeg.
Okay.
It's located in the province of Manitoba, of course, that's in Canada.
Okay.
It's in central Canada.
Mm-hmm.
We have very hot summers and very cold winters.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Good.
it's home.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Okay. Good. And tell me a little bit. What are the types of jobs that are available in Winnipeg?
There's many jobs available in Winnipeg. We have a local university, so there's jobs at
Okay.
the university.
Yes.
A lot of jobs in agriculture. I mean, we have stores here, so there's
Yes.
people working in retail as well.
Good.
Business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And let me just and tell me a little bit about where you're living. Is it a house or an apartment? Describe a little bit about it for me.
Sure. So I live in a condominium. It looks like an apartment, so it's a building with 3 stories.
Okay.
My suite is a 2-bedroom condominium.
Mm-hmm.
It's located right next to a public school.
Okay.
So there's a lot of activity going around, lots of families, kids.
Yeah.
Nice area.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. And can you describe a little bit what would be the difference between a house and a condo or apartment?
Right. So a house would be a single standing building. Usually it's 2 stories. It would also have a basement.
Okay.
People often own houses, and an apartment or a condominium. Apartments are rented,
Okay.
and their buildings usually high rises, maybe 16 stories, even more.
Yes.
Condominiums could be townhouse style, so it could be connected with another person, or a building as I described that I live in, which is 3 stories.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. So we will pause there, and then I will move into part 2
Okay.
with that. So just again as general feedback, within a very short time, extended sentences, knowledge about several different topics. Lubna is very comfortable, and so I'm not going to extend that time, because part of the reason for part 1 is just to have them answer familiar questions and be a bit more relaxed. So then I decided to just conclude and move right into part 2, which is what we'll do right now. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
And you will have 1 minute, and I will keep track of the time, 1 minute to think of some answers, and then 1 to 2 minutes to respond. So your question says, describe something which you own, which is very important to you. When did you get it, or where did you get it? How long have you had it? What do you use it for? Those would be some of the pieces of information that we're looking for. So you have 1 minute. to think of that question.
All right.
Okay, so you will have 1 to 2 minutes to give your response to that question. You
Sure.
can start.
All right, so the item that I picked that I own, which is very important to me, is my cell phone.
Okay.
More importantly, a smartphone.
Yes.
I got it at Costco. They have a little kiosk there that sells cell phones. It was about 3 years ago that I got this particular one. The smartphone in particular, I've owned a cell phone for 17 years now. However, the smartphone is very different than the flip phones that came up, or the brick, the Nokia brick.
Okay.
It's used mainly for work. The smartphone has enabled me to utilize the calendar function for work and scheduling many appointments and meetings, so I'm not missing anything.
Yep.
Also, just communication with coworkers and such. It's also, of course, personal use, texting family and friends, talking on the phone, which I think most people don't do these days.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the general use, and it is really important, and I think I would be lost if I didn't have it.
Okay. Excellent.
Okay.
Good. So in that conversation, then Lubna was able to be concise and still answer all the questions that I was looking for. It was 1 minute and 15 seconds, and you don't have to worry if it's a little bit, like, it's within that time frame. We have 1 to 2 minutes. So she was able to give the details and the information and then a summary at the end, which is excellent. One slight advice that I would look at this point is, because she talked about the cell phone for work and for personal use, then just to add some more transition signals. And so to say at the start, I use this in 2 ways. And the first way is, or firstly, and then secondly, or another way, just to have a little bit more the paragraph style. It's not taking away from your marks, but it does enhance your marks. So these are the small details that are going to, the teachers are going to see between a 6.5 and a 7, or a 7 and a 7.5. So if I'm interacting with somebody that has low-level grammar, vocabulary is limited, sentences are short, I'm going to focus more on other areas, their fluency, their pronunciation, those parts. But when we're looking at this high level and just the differences that are small, these are going to be some of the things that will just convince the examiner, oh, I have this ability that's a little bit higher rather than at that level. One thing that I've noticed, if you're new to Canada and you're going to explain about things that the examiner may not be familiar with, then you want to give a, if you say a word or a phrase and then you want to give some explanation. So in my previous interview a few minutes ago, there was a food described with a name, and then it was said specifically, oh, it has rice, it has yogurt, and it has meat within it. That was excellent because I didn't know what it was. In this case, Lubna used the store name Costco, and that tells me a couple of things. One, she's been in Canada a few years, although we already know many years. But it's fine to give context or information that Canadians would be familiar with if you're doing the exam in Canada, because we already know, or you're speaking to somebody that would be familiar with these things. So just those are kind of the secrets or the tips. If you say something and I'm not sure if they notice, or you see the facial features, they're confused, then add a few more details before moving ahead from that. And you have to be relaxed to do that. If you're nervous, you'll probably miss that part. But again, it's going to be that difference there of increasing your score by half a band or even a full band by noticing some of those things. Let's move directly into part 3 from this.
Sure.
I'm going to change the questions slightly because in part 2 you were talking about your cell phone and about technology. So let me just ask, what have been some technology-related changes that you have seen or that you would say would be different between your parents' generation and between our current generation?
Sure. So technology has certainly advanced from my parents' generation to mine. Okay. We have smart TVs now, so TVs that really take commands from people. They're even flat. Before they weren't flat, they were a big cube and quite heavy. Yes. Yeah. We have the internet. Although the internet would have been available during my parents' generation, it was not used by the public. I believe it was used by the Army. Okay. So the internet is widely accessible to everyone now, including little children. Babies too. Yeah. Yeah, technology has changed a lot. I mean, now we are carrying our computer on our hand. It's our cell phone. It's our smartphone. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Lots of changes in technology.
Okay, and I'm going to pursue a little bit more within one section that you talked about. You said technology is now available to everyone. This can be a problem for children. Can you give me some solutions to help solve that problem with smaller children, let's say preschoolers or elementary age, having access to everything that's on the internet?
Mm-hmm. So there's definitely ways to prevent children from having access to everything on the internet. There are parental locks that you can put on your computer. Parents or guardians should definitely be monitoring screen time for their little ones. If someone is using a device like a child, it should be in the presence of an adult or a responsible person. And yeah, they shouldn't be able to use it all the time. I think it should be definitely limited and use those parental locks available.
Okay, excellent. Sure. So I'm going to jump into a new topic. We know that pollution around the world has become more and more of an issue.
Yes. And
we could talk about land pollution, noise pollution, air pollution. I want to focus on the issue of garbage. So in many different countries, there's different methods of disposing of the garbage. Can you give me maybe just some insights? How do you think garbage should be disposed? What are some ways that we can be eliminating or reducing the amount of land pollution that we may have in our country or in the world?
Well, great question. So I know in North America we definitely go through a lot of garbage. Things are highly overpackaged. Okay. So I think part of reducing the garbage would be to limit the packaging in some of the products that are out there. Okay. Food doesn't have to be wrapped up in like foil and then plastic. Like food is natural. That should maybe more farmers markets and things like that to reduce on that garbage. Another thing would be recycling. People should be recycling a lot more and being aware of what can be recycled. And then also reusing, that's another thing. So the 3 R's, right? Recycle, reduce, reuse. Yes. Reusing items rather than, if something's maybe broken or could be fixed, try to get it fixed. The heel on my boot, it came unglued. Okay. So should I just throw that away in the garbage or should I go to the local shop and get it fixed? I think I should get it fixed. It would reduce the garbage in this world. Yeah. And then I guess you asked globally. I think it's just I know globally, like some places burn their garbage, for example.
Okay.
So that's really bad for the pollution. So definitely reducing is going to really help, I think, overall.
Okay.
Yes.
And I'll just ask one more question and then we'll wrap up. Some have suggested, now that we have access to space, that we should just have some of our garbage and we should just be shooting it off and just letting it travel past Mars and Jupiter and out into the solar world. What would be your opinion or response to that?
I think that that's a terrible idea. I think we do have a problem with garbage, and I don't think shooting it up to space is the answer.
Okay.
Who knows what the implications of shooting our garbage up to space is.
Yeah.
We're already in a problem where we're experiencing global warming, so shooting it up to space could just mean more disaster. Not a good idea, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you for your time.
Oh, you're welcome, Trevor. Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So, in response to some of these sections, again, extended response, good grammar, pronunciation, fluency, those are all areas that Lubna excels in. Probably the only, again, picky things would just be adding a couple of more transition signals. And so with problem solution, well, here's two solutions to dealing with this. We don't often think about it in this way, and so a conversation would not necessarily have those transition signals within them. But keep in mind that if you're in the academic IELTS, and that's where much of my background and training has been looking at, we want to be moving you into the university setting. You'll be seeing those in your writing, in your reading, and so using those in your speaking helps show a more academic approach. Vocabulary was excellent, implications, shooting it off into space, different phrases that were given there. Overall, for both of the interviews that we've had today, well done, and we'll continue to share IELTS tips and secrets as we move forward, inshallah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
السلام عليكم مرة أخرى مشاهدينا الكرام، مشاهدي The Arab Immigrants. بداية علينا أن نقدم الشكر لمانيتوبا إسلاميك أسوسيشن دي MIA في وينيبيغ التي أعطتنا المكان الذي قمنا بالتصوير فيه، فلهم الشكر الجزيل. ونشكر جميع من تابعنا اليوم بالحلقة. الحمد لله رب العالمين تمت وإن كنا قد تأخرنا قليلا. نشكر الأستاذ تريفور على ما يقدمه من مجهودات معنا. Thank you Trevor. ونأمل إن شاء الله رب العالمين أن نكون معكم في حلقات قادمة سنعلن عنها، لأنه سيسافر لفترة محددة في سبتمبر. ربما we are coming back in October.
That's correct. Yes.
Yes. إذن سنعود ثانية في حلقات الآيلتس في أكتوبر. استغلوا الفرصة، اكتبوا ما تريدون، ابعثوا أسئلة مسجلة بالصوت وسنقوم بعرضها بعد ترتيبها إن شاء الله. تحياتنا لكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.